Hello, hello, hello. Pleasure to have you here, all beautiful people, and welcome back to Getting Real with Paula. For those joining us for the very first time, we are pursuing our journey under the theme Uplifting Individuals as well as Communities. Tonight, it is my pleasure to bring back Roen Higgins for heart to heart conversation on mental health. At the same time, we're hoping or we're going to work hard to identify some practices that you can put in place to maintain your own mental health, regardless of the pandemic context that we're under. So, without further ado, good evening, Rowan. So good to have you back.
Thank you for having me, Paula. It's good to be back.
Yes, yes, yes. Another great conversation with my friend.
Yes.
So, could you share for the people who haven't seen you yet a little bit about yourself, as well as what brought you to this conversation about mental health?
For sure. Well, I could say what brought me here is an amazing powerhouse transformational facilitator, Paula. I think there's no mistakes as I've been looking at pictures and how we met, which was a platform on mental health.
Mhm.
You remember that amazing event?
Yes.
And we were side by side, never met each other, which blew my mind when I now know who you are. And I think that in itself was aligned, a total alignment. So I'm grateful for that opportunity to connect with you now. And I'm an educator, I'm a mother, I'm a transformational coach, speaker, and empowerment event producer. I love to do anything that is about elevating impact and
Mhm.
helping others. So I'm here to serve with love. I love to just give back in areas where I feel like there's a missing link. So I guess I could say I'm standing in the gap where I feel a connection needs to be made or bridges need to be built. So yeah, that's basically the short end of it. And yeah, born and raised Montrealer, parents of a heritage. My heritage is of Jamaican background, and yeah.
Thank you, thank you. So that's a lot of details, a lot more than
A lot of
I
details.
thought she was going to share. I think she feels comfortable.
Oh,
So,
girl, round two with you. I'm comfortable.
So, can you share with us some of your family legacy and how mental health has played a role in your own life?
Sure. You know, so my mom was, she had pregnant with me. She'd already had two children. And by the time she was pregnant with me, she was already showing signs of depression. And after she had me, what many women struggle with is postpartum depression. And
Mhm.
that became so magnified to the point of full blown schizophrenia, as you would call it, with a lot of ideation, hearing voices, paranoid delusions. And she kept moving. She didn't trust a lot of family members, and she moved to New York with my little sister at this point, who's now an infant. I'm 2 years old, and she was found walking in the streets of New York 3 a.m. barefoot with two young children, and she was picked up by the police. So just that story alone, you could only imagine, how do we get to Montreal? Who was the support system?
Mhm.
We were heading towards an orphanage if our family did not come and rescue us. Um, and my mom kept moving around, so I never had a chance to live with her because it was in and out of hospitals, and it's just medication. There was no real treatment happening other than medication. And I grew up watching, when I'd go to her house, or when I would see her, um, sorry, when I was even allowed to see her, because at times, like, you know just the lack of knowledge and the fear of people not understanding, it's like, no, you're not coming to see, I want to see my children, banging at the door. And we're like, mommy, the screams and the shouting back and forth. And she was not allowed to see us for several years until she was better. So just those memories alone, I didn't notice until many in my adulthood how those memories and experiences affected me. And then my sister, unfortunately, in her adolescent years, we may not have been able to pin it then, but because I'm in the field of counseling and working with at-risk youth who suffer from mental health, that's when I realized my sister has been dealing with this for a long time. But when it really magnified is when she had her own children, and then the postpartum depression, and then she ended up having the same symptoms as my mom. Until this day, she's hospitalized as we speak.
Oh,
So, I was one of those, ha ha ha, laugh at everything. Anyways, there would be trauma, there'd be crisis, but I never was affected to even having a tear on my face unless I got, the reprimand, the meetings, as we call it, when, you're growing up, that corporal punishment. I didn't have tears for anything else.
okay.
And it was when I was in my 20s where I started to get these effects and coming off my bed and not feeling my legs. And I thought I had MS and my face was frozen. I'm like, it must be a stroke. And my hands were tingling and heart palpitations. I'm having a heart attack and dry mouth. And then, boom, hospitalized. And they did scans and everything. And they're like, stress, you have general anxiety disorder. What? Because to me, anxiety is linked to like a phobia. You can't go outside. You're anxious. You're scared of stuff, not knowing that you may not have a fear of anything, but you not dealing with your actual the things in your life that you're confronted with, and you're avoidant. You're suppressing and suppressing those layers. It will come back to haunt you, and it comes big through your body. Physiologically, will affect you, and you're like, it's like you think you've learned something in biology. No, we do not even understand how stress can kill us, literally, because I felt like I was dying, and how it messes with your biological clock, how it
Mm-hmm.
messes with your sleep patterns, your appetite, your sex drive, if whether you want to eat or not, insomnia, like all these things
Mm-hmm.
that we're like, I don't know what's wrong with me. I'm hot, or I'm my fingers are always cold. It messes with your hormones. So these are things that I really wish people would have educated us on, especially when it's in our family. But I think everyone needs to know, because we now know 1 in 5 people are affected with mental health.
And that's we're talking 1 in 5 annually, and that's in Canada. We're not talking war zone areas, so that would go even bigger. And right now with the pandemic, there's so many every low stress
Hmm.
seems to be heightened because of the context. So it's I would say by the time we finish with COVID or whatever the public health regulations tells us, by the
Yeah.
time we're done, I
Hmm.
am not sure that if we do if we have statistics, that they're not going to show that everybody went a little worse, not better but worse. We might not have the traffic stress, but everything else still is there.
You are totally correct. That pandemic wall is so real. The initial fear that we saw in the media, and how many people are actually reaching out. I have a family member that was going through a crisis, reaching out to services that are there available for everyone, and not getting a call back, and knowing that
Oh,
our mental health system was overwhelmed and could not
before.
serve.
Mhm.
And even now, people are like, two children just now, they lost a family member, they thought they need counseling, and there's no services right now because they're so flooded. It's yeah,
It
very
is
sad.
sad. It is truly sad
Mhm.
because those are times that change people's journey.
That's right.
And when you can't access the service, that also means you're going to have the impact will have longer lasting
Yes. Yes.
consequences. And that's what we do not want.
Very
So,
true.
on
Mhm.
a different note, still about mental health, what does taking care of your mental health means to you in concrete ways
Um,
nowadays?
yeah, I would say, you know what, first, taking care of your mental health for me would first be to recognize it, to recognize how precious it is. You know what I mean? Like, because we take it for granted. We wake up, and even the language, the things that we say, and I'm speaking for those who have not gotten to a point of full blown depression or
Mhm,
anxiety. It's not clinical, let's just say that. So, for everyone who has a sane mind, if you will, we're
mhm,
not diagnosed with anything. We even think we're fully healthy. The things that we tell ourselves, like, oh, I woke up on the wrong side of the bed. Oh, I'm on my monthly, or you're making me upset. It's your fault. Like, you know what I
mhm.
mean? Like the things that we do and the transference of blame, putting our stressors, we blame the stressors, the external
Yeah,
stressors, and say that's why I'm this way. That is such a huge danger, and we need to shift our mindset.
yeah.
And so taking care of your mental health is one, recognizing when we do have the power. So before it becomes something that's no longer in your
Mhm,
control and it's a full out illness,
mhm.
how we can manage ourselves through the daily practices, through our mindset, through the words that we tell ourselves. The power of words is so important because, people are like, oh, I'm just having a horrible day. This whole week has been off. Sometimes we don't even realize that we all have cycles in our lives, like around this time of year or month or season, right? This big time for seasonal
Yeah,
depression, winter,
yeah.
climate, how much hours of sleep you get. I was a night crawler and I learned very late. And by the time I did learn, it was still hard for me to change it. 4 hours sleep and I could keep going. I could do everything.
Mm,
That's part of the burnout. And that in itself, people don't realize, they don't recognize the signs of a burnout. But some of us, in order to deal with our mental health, we overwork.
yeah.
We become workaholics, or some
Mhm,
people alcoholic, or be shopaholic. We
mhm.
become some kind of holic, trying to suppress what's really happening. So to recognize what's happening, and it's okay to not be okay, but don't stay in that state. Let's
Yeah.
get support.
And I know for myself, and I guess it's the way I raise my kids as well. Every now and then, I will make a statement.
Hmm.
Oh gosh, my brain is all over the place, and my child comes in. Don't say that, mom. Just say you're distracted right now. And those are small
Wow.
little things. And it's true. It's those things we tell ourselves.
I'm
And
so
that's
stupid.
what I
I'm such an
call
idiot.
the internal negative
That's
discourse
right.
that creates
Hmm.
additional challenges. Because if I tell myself in the morning, I'm so tired, it's going to be a long day, it's going to be a difficult day, guess what? This is what you're going to notice. Everything that goes wrong, that's what you're going to line up with my perspective that it's not a good day.
You primed your mind for the day. It's like making your bed, you
Yeah.
know? So you're doing the fitted sheets and the pillowcase. You're setting up your bed for the day. So if you just like, ah, look at this messy bed, and you leave it that way, your day just kind of unravels.
Mhm,
It's so
mhm,
true.
mhm.
Yeah.
In the context of the pandemic,
Hmm.
what are some of the lesson learned in terms of mental health for you?
Wow. So like many people in the beginning, when we didn't take it seriously, I was just like, this is a vacation. I got a week off because I thought it was gonna be a week or two.
Yeah.
And then, right? And then the reality hit and the fear
Yeah.
mongering. Like, yes, it was a serious state, but when I heard there was tanks, army trucks outside in the streets, I was like, what's happening? So
Mhm.
that realization that unplugging was necessary. This is a reality. And watching bodies, and there's no morgues, there's no space. This panic was taking over. And even for us who are educated in the mental health field, the
Most
overwhelm
definitely.
starts to sink in. It's a
Mhm.
reality. So one is to lean on those support systems, have those conversations, be aware what's happening in the world, and I need to unplug
Mm-hmm.
Social media, I'm very good at unplugging from the news, so that was not a problem. But for those of you who that's a thing, I learned that from 9/11 that I
Mm-hmm.
cannot repeat that. When Katrina happened, I couldn't watch the media
No.
because it start to overthink and get
Mm-hmm.
fearful and these things.
Mm-hmm.
So unplugging, uh, leaning on my supports, speaking to professionals when the time comes, when you're feeling overwhelmed, and then start to like say, okay, what can I do today? I don't know. Tomorrow's not promised. I don't know what's going to
Mm-hmm.
happen tomorrow. I
Yeah.
may not be in control what's happening with the world, but can I control what's happening inside of me?
Yeah.
And then my child and my space. So I got plants. So that's a big realization for me. I had two plants. I thought I was a plant killer. I don't have a green thumb. Another the bad words to say to ourselves. I have thriving plants since the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
People are like, oh my God, you got to love them. Like, those are my pandemic babies. You know what I mean? So caring for something outside of
Yes.
yourself, because my daughter's 17, she was 16 at the time, but plants is like, it's like a new baby, right?
Yeah.
And that was important for me. Yeah.
And I love what you're saying because it's taking those healthier habits. I know I've always walked with my dogs. I have dogs,
Hmm.
and over the pandemic, what changed
Hmm.
is that I took the kids with me.
Yes.
It's that now we're walking, but you're because we cannot connect like we used to.
Hmm.
You can still smile when you don't have the
Yes.
mask
Yes.
to people or say good morning, which we in the
I did a lot
rush.
of head bowing.
That's it. What we used to do because we were in the rush all the time, we had forgotten about it.
Yes.
So there's building relationships, but from a different perspective. And I totally agree with you with the staying in the moment and taking care of those things you have control over.
Yeah.
For me, one of the big challenges, and I'm saying for me, but for a lot of Canadians, is working from home.
Hmm.
Working from home also means there's no longer a separation between work and home.
Overlap.
And that overlap in itself is a stress because if I have my work PC in front of me, even if I'm watching a movie, I turn around, I see the work PC, my brain just connects to that. So
Yeah.
there's these things we have to figure out how we coexist in
Yes.
the same space, but in a way that I am taking care of self. Because trust me, when work is so close, it's hard to disconnect, if even if it was hard before.
Before you said it, you totally pinned it. And I think in the beginning, even people getting used to working from home and juggling the children and oh, you're telling yourself I'm saving time with traffic, like you said, but really taking the time to separate your work is like, okay, I'm going to do this in my room. I'm going to
Mhm.
meditate in this space. All right. I'm going to pray and meditate in this space. Here, I'm going to do my work, but now I'm going to get up like lunchtime and walk outside for half
Yes.
an hour and get that sunlight. And I'm trying to like, don't eat in the same place I work,
Mhm.
because you're right. It really does blur the mind. And if
Mhm.
those lines get blurred, it's really unhealthy for you. So that's a very good point. And I had to learn it the hard way because it started to like, I start to feel brain fog,
Wow.
which is a sign of mental health, right? Like,
Yeah, and brain fog, at least for me, also extends to what you end up doing in the evening. So if you have that brain fog and then you're watching TV, but you're not really watching, you're just zooming from channel to channel, that's still the brain fog working on you. So it's figuring out what can I do that is productive but actually nourishes me as well.
that's right.
Yeah.
That's the nourishing, the daily practices is what I'm definitely has helped me. Yes.
As an advocate for mental health, uh, can you share some your views or insight in terms of everyday things that we need to be mindful of, aside from those we've already mentioned?
Oh yeah. So for me, it was the daily practices. So like I said, when I first felt like it was a vacation, it's
Mhm.
like, oh, I'll go pose. Like I felt so good to have that. I started sleeping in and changing my patterns. And I started to feel the effects of changing my routine in a
Mhm.
negative way. I felt groggy and tired and I felt getting lazy. I said, no, no, no. So I made sure to still wake up at the same time. Because for me, working from home as an educator, we weren't doing the same. Schools just shut down. So it's not like I had to type and still show up. And that's when I realized, no, you wake up the same time, get dressed, shower, give yourself a routine. And it brings you back to, and Paul, I'm sure you've known people who, when they retire, how they age so quickly, or some people have died
Yes.
after retirement because there's no more
Yes.
sense of purpose. And in Japanese culture, in the one of the blue zones, they call it what? Ikigai, sense of raison d'être, right? So
Hmm.
when we no longer have something to look forward to, you start to feel like, well, what am I here for? And you
Yeah.
question, and you get, your head gets fogged up.
Useless.
Useless. So daily
Yeah.
practices for sure. And for me, it was like I said, my environment became more important.
Hmm.
If my home is now also a work environment, that's why I got the plants. I changed my cushions on, just put some brighter. I don't usually have yellow. It's very blue and gray. I'm like, I need a pop of color in here, right? Because you're not going out as much. At first, it was like we were scared to even get sunlight.
Hmm.
Because we were told if you walked outside, we were going to, disappear or something. It was a fear. And so
Yeah.
I was very mindful of my environment, my mind, what I told my
Hmm.
mind. So
Hmm.
affirmations. I am amazing. I am alive. And just looking for things to be grateful for. So some people
Yes.
do a gratitude journal. I just start pinning them.
Hmm.
My child is breathing. I'm here. We're healthy. Every day that went that we
Yes.
didn't have COVID or a family member, and if someone did, how
Hmm.
can I be a light? How can I be of service?
Hmm.
Because I'm sure, like yourself, you feel like you can't control what's happening in the world, but can I control some with my neighbor?
Yeah.
Can I help them? Okay, you know what I mean? Do you need me to help with you with groceries? The elderly who had to wait in long lines in the
Hmm.
winter. So those are the things that I felt, just some of the things, but utilizing my vision board much more to know that there is hope. Keep having a vision. Don't let what you
Yeah.
think is happening in the world really take away what your purpose is. Because that happened at first. Pending doom, like 9/11, the same, what's going to happen to us? I'm not in control of the decision of my government makes, but I'm in control of the decisions I can make. And
That's it.
today, it's to be healthy, to be
Hmm.
safe, and to care for someone else other than myself.
It's so interesting what you're saying because I think as adults we get to a point where routine give us that sense of control or bring back
Mm,
that sense of control.
that's right.
And it's important to realize that it's not because nothing is the same that I
Mhm.
can't create a routine that works for me.
Right.
And again, this is the sense of I might have a little more time, but I want to use it good in a way that is nurturing for
Hmm.
myself and the people around me as well.
Yes. Yes.
In and have to bring it up from a perspective of we know that in quite a few communities,
Hmm.
mental health is still a big taboo.
Yeah.
What advice would you want to share with parents and adults
Hmm.
in terms of the importance of broaching the topic
Hmm.
and stretching perspectives of the people around them?
So yeah, so to the older generation that, like you said, it was so taboo, and these conversations we weren't open. And I'll speak from a perspective of Caribbean or African or certain cultures where it's we associate mental health. You're crazy. That somebody do voodoo on them. Obia, as they say
Yeah,
in Jamaica, and all these
yeah.
labels. So because we don't understand it, we try to label it. Well, where this
Hmm.
come from? You must have done something wrong. This is a curse. It's something you guys did. You know, and because it's so taboo and shameful, we don't want to have the conversation. So my message is to have an open dialogue in our communities, in our faith-based
Yes.
institutions, in our homes. And it's not like we said, 1 in 5. So why are we so ashamed when it's so common?
Hmm.
And it doesn't always, first of all, mental health won't always look what we call crazy, or
Hmm.
or using of words like, oh, they're just so schizo, oh, that
Hmm.
person's so bipolar. Like, to just tag people with these names makes it more, you makes it shameful.
Yes.
It is a real medical condition. And once we see it equivalent to cancer, that people not only could lose their lives from it, it disrupts their whole ecosystem.
Hmm.
Then we can move forward to say this is normal. how can we assist, support, even prevent, and speaking to our younger children about it to recognize signs. So even dementia with the elderly, oh, grandma, it's a little cuckoo now. Don't worry about it. You know, how can
Mm-hmm.
we how can we show? How about we say, hey, we're going through a change. We all go through different stages, and I
Yeah.
believe every person. I don't have the stats. Every person goes through some type of mental health crises in their life.
Yep.
We've all had quiet trauma, even if you've never dealt with it personally. Just like look at the George Floyd thing. We
Mm-hmm.
all saw that on screen,
Mm-hmm.
and that is a trauma that sits there for everyone.
Definitely.
And if we in our
Definitely.
community have seen domino effects of it over and over and over, or women who have been raped or violated, you know what I mean? It's I may have never experienced that, but I know so many women who've gone through those things. We pull onto these things and stories and our own issues. And like I said, I didn't do with my traumas. They caught up to me.
They always cut up to you, and that's the part for me, in terms of parenting,
Mhm.
in terms of taking care of your, whether it's siblings, your parents, or the people around you. When there's
Mhm.
this huge, and I don't like to use the term huge, but when there's a significant change in someone's mood and behavior, you
Yes.
want to pay attention, you want to check in, you want to validate what's going on. And
Yes.
even, let's just say, beginning of the pandemic, we know Amazon was doing great and is still doing great, but as you say, shopping a lot could be a sign that I'm not handling something. And
Yes.
that those are the
Because they have
elements that you,
control to shop, right? It's a sense of control.
this illusion of control, because you
Yes,
receive the
you're
box
right.
and you barely look at it and then move on to what's next can I get. So it's
Yes.
not filling that need that
Mhm.
you might have. And when I'm
It-
thinking about kids, it's the sense where what parents have to realize is that whatever stress you're feeling,
mhm.
it's also transpiring in your interaction with your children. And children and teenagers are having a really hard time. So broaching the topic, how are you doing? Do you want to go for a walk? So pushing a little more
Yeah,
than, oh no, I'm good. I'm doing my gaming. So gaming is another way of escaping the
that's right.
reality,
Yes.
which creates additional stress. So it's gonna catch up with you, as you say.
Yeah.
Everything catch
So
up with
I
you.
was going to say that about validating the feelings, having a conversation, and feeling. Let if once you remove the block, the obstacle, because
Yeah.
you don't want to talk about it, and it's a how do you say it, a gray space. Then
Yes.
then there's no they can't receive, they can't feel comfortable to say, hey,
No.
I know this is very tough. I don't know how you may be feeling, but I am here. And just because we recognize the signs of full blown, like even in our field, we may think we know all the signs, but they show up differently for everyone,
Every single one.
every single person, and even amongst ourselves to read it. That's why it's good for anyone, no matter what state of mind. So those
Mhm.
in your audience, like if you feel that you're okay every day, still do a check-in
Mhm.
because it catches up to us. We don't know. Job change, moving day, relationship breakup, sometimes just the weather. Do a daily check-in. How am I feeling today? And do it for others around you.
And I think we're in that conversation. It's always better to ask
Yes.
than not ask. How are you doing today? What are your plans for the day? It's just validating. Have a conversation. Let the person know that you are seeing them. Because in this pandemic, quite a few people are feeling invisible. And that creates a stress in itself.
And Paula, we've
Huge.
seen a rise in our community, especially with in the Black community in Montreal. How many of our Black men have taken their lives?
Yeah.
And exactly what you said is it makes me feel like, what if? And not to say nobody did, but even people, and I may not have known the last two gentlemen. Well, one of them was a former student, and it makes you feel like, wow, what were you going through? And was there anybody reaching out? And even if we reach out, is there something that could have been done differently? And
Mhm.
we don't know, but at least we can know that we tried and say, hey, how are you doing?
Yeah.
What are you doing today? How can I assist you?
Yeah.
You never
And
know.
it's those elements when you're looking around, the people, is just Try to have a little deeper conversation. Don't keep it at the
Surface.
superficial. So, which is, yeah, it's nice outside. Yeah, we're good. It's nice. Okay. So, how are
Hmm.
you doing? I'm good. I'm good. So, what's up with you? What are you keeping yourself with? So, it's the sense of engage in conversation so that the person get that sense that, okay, I'm being recognized, I'm being acknowledged, which is in a situation where often some of us might be weeks without days without talking to anyone. So if I'm on a Zoom for about half an hour, I can fake a lot of things. Even an hour, I can fake. But after days or days and days, the weight is still there. So it's how do we get check on your people?
I see behind you, Paula, like that's a reminder. Those paintings. Another thing that I recognize is we're worrying. I don't know if you ever heard the quote about worrying and how we're obsessing, but we could flip it to wonder. And to me, creativity and imagination is wonder. I'm looking at that's another thing I had to learn to really connect with an outlet. Some people got into baking, some people did music and knitting and things they haven't done in decades.
Yes,
I think that was so amazing to see the people that plunged in, but to also remind others who were like, well, I'm not baking. It's okay too to not do anything.
that's it.
What works for you? And for
And
me, it's moving from worry to wonder. And it's something I'm still applying
mhm.
every day.
I love that moving from worry to wonder because it's this small little things. I was walking today and it's just the sense of feeling the sun on your skin. It's warmer. You can feel the spring coming and you just stay in that moment rather than say, okay, I gotta be back for work. Okay, let me rush to do this. Take the time because the way we're functioning through the pandemic is completely unparalleled to what we've done before. And
Yes.
it's recognizing that.
Hmm. I miss the stillness.
So, if what?
I miss this when we had that moment. Remember when everything just paused, the stillness, the animals in nature, the air was clear in countries like in Asia where like they've seen black in China where the skies are black and it was like, this is the first time since I was like, that's out of
Yes.
something so deadly, beauty arose, and it just showed you to take the time to
Homework.
pause.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, and be still.
definitely, definitely. In terms of your own mental well being,
Hmm.
what are examples of things that you stopped doing or started doing? You mentioned the plants. Other
Definitely the
things?
plants. Um, Unplugging. So, when I was home, I go to work, but I'm home, I'll be online or watching certain conferences and classes. I had to stop because everything was on Zoom now. I was zoomed out. I felt that, as they called it at the time, Zoom tired. You remember when that was a thing? I was
Yeah.
Zoom tired, yes. And I had to unplug and then walking more. I stayed a lot more in nature. I live near the water. I
Oh,
started
wow.
walking, making sure every day get outside for 30 minutes because I was working out at home, but I realized I needed to change my environment. That was
Mhm.
so important. Especially, I love traveling. I'm very proud with my passport, and to know that I was like, I need to stamp my own passport right here in the city. Where can I
Mhm.
go in nature and switch it up to make it feel like I still have the opportunity to travel because I do know
Yes.
my city, even if things are shut down and on lockdown.
Mhm.
Where can I find a little piece of joy? So I started to enjoy a park or a baseball field and just walk around my neighborhood and find different alleys and different things like that and explore differently. Um, Another thing I would definitely say is in my house where it's like not just wearing the PJs, change, shower and change my clothes as if I'm going somewhere
Mhm.
changes the game. So I had to stop doing that because I started doing that. I'm like, no, flip the script. Try to look a little, even though I'm home, just feel good because you realize
Mhm.
my perfume's going to waste, my lip gloss is going to waste, like
Mhm.
even my jewelry. Just start putting on something even from home, just to
Yeah.
feel like I'm doing something different. And what I stopped doing, which I should have done earlier, is I. This is not a quote, but I'll call it a quote. It's an affirmation for me. No is a full sentence.
Yes.
Hey, no is a full sentence. And why that was so powerful to me is because I started to say no in the last couple of years. If it didn't align with my brand
Mhm.
or my schedule, But we find, especially as a woman, we explain ourselves. No, because I have the kids this weekend. No,
Yeah.
no, arrête. No, I can't. Thank you for the opportunity, but I have to digress. Yeah, I have to decline. So yeah.
I so agree about the no, and it's interesting because as a parent of young adult, they are sometimes surprised when you say no and you don't give a reason, and I'm like, no, don't have to. You
Well,
want to?
I'm learning, and I'm going to be right behind you. I'm getting there, but
No, it's a process, and it's also a process for ourselves.
Mhm.
And when we're talking about starting and stopping, it's important to write yourself what it is that you're doing.
Right.
Otherwise, you're going to forget.
Hmm.
No is a full sentence, as you say. It's an affirmation, but it's also a reminder
That's right.
because every now and then you forget and you slip back into the old habits. So it's this part, okay,
We're
these are the
conditioned.
things I will no longer do. So that it's clear. And I tend to be like you in the beginning of the pandemic. I would dress very casual.
Yeah.
And then at one point, it's like casual doesn't do it for me. If I can lie down with those clothes, that's too casual. So
Hmm.
went back to wearing real clothes and trying to make sense of what clothing I had so that you get the illusion that, oh, I can look at myself and see something beautiful rather than, oh my God, what happened to you? Because,
Yes.
that's,
Yeah. Yeah.
if you can't recognize yourself, this is again,
And it
this
breaks
part.
up your day. It makes you feel like I've woken up to do something important. I'm here to
Yes.
rise and shine and thrive, not go womp 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 womp. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
and that
definitely.
created the difference for me. So the reason why I said the no statement is because the biggest thing for anyone listening to this, and not even when the pandemic's over, is setting boundaries for ourselves,
Mhm.
with others, but even in our space, what you do, like, don't let things pile up and you're like, well, nobody's coming to my house anyway. Set the boundaries. What's important to you?
Yeah,
Your values matter. To be in our
definitely.
optimal health, we need to, support others with dignity. Put
Yeah,
the oxygen mask on yourself first.
definitely.
Very important.
Definitely. As a matter with the family history that you have, how and when did you have the mental health conversation with your kid?
So I would say later than I think was appropriate. I think I should have done it earlier. I believe so, not think. And the reason why is sometimes I run from the conversation myself, to be honest with you.
Mhm.
Even when people start to dub me as a mental health advocate and this and that, or offer me a job at a mental institution, I'm like, no, 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 I don't do that. I don't work in suicide units. I'll work with just the regular at-risk youth, as if it's any different,
Mhm.
because of the fear of being immersed in what I grew up around.
Mhm. Yeah,
And to me, and it sounds very ignorant, but I'm going to be fully transparent. Like, I can't do too much crazy. It's because I felt like I was just
it's
baptized in
pulling
it.
you back to
Yeah,
what?
yeah.
Yeah.
And people have dubbed me as crazy, like, yo, that one's a little off, because I was always like hyper
Hmm.
and out there. Um, but then I realized, when your calling is your calling, it kept coming to me. People, strangers who were suffering with mental health illnesses would just come to me. And I'm like, there are 40 other people on the bus. Why are you coming to me? Right? It started to annoy me. From my 20s, I noticed I just attracted these
Yeah.
people. And that's when I realized that is your calling. Step up, be bold, know when
Hmm.
to like redirect and refer.
Hmm.
It doesn't mean I take on the world. I'm not trying to wear this S on my
Hmm.
chest. But if I am a queen of resource, I can provide them with information that can help
That's
them.
right.
I can provide them with tools. And it doesn't mean I have to like open my home to everyone and says, come, I'm not a Mother Teresa. No, I need to work on my mental health too. I have my boundaries, but I can assist because when people are going through it, my family members showing this, I said, this is what you do. Step one, two, three. And I'm like, thank you. And I'm like, wow, because I was called to serve in that area because I've lived it, you know?
And there's nothing better to me than to speak to someone who looks like you, who
Mm,
seems to have lived like
yes.
you. it can actually provide information. There's one thing about taking the phone and calling a practitioner and then
Hmm.
having a conversation, but there's a distance in that
Yes,
conversation when it's, oh, but that's the girl next door. That's the girl who takes the bus with me. And then she gets me without feeling, oh, it's the sense of not having to be at a different level.
that's
That's
right.
what,
They can, and they're more trusting towards it because they don't
that's,
feel like, especially in our culture, you're going to call social services, my kid's going to get taken
yeah.
away. There's a
Mhm.
mistrust of the system. Anyone
Yes.
who wears a coat or a lapel or a label, you know. So back to what you asked about my child is when they come home and say my friend's brother took their life, you
Oh.
know, or and then they're in high school, it's like, ooh, you know. So even though I've had the surface conversation, I've never had the deep conversations, but I've had it in other ways of like doing check-ins. But now
Mhm.
I'm very open, especially during the pandemic, and we've all experienced our own hit our own walls. Is
Yeah.
to make sure I do a check-in. How are you feeling? Not just how did you sleep? Have a
Mhm.
good morning. How are you feeling? You know, especially my daughter started college and I'm checking in. How are you feeling with school? Are you able to
Mhm.
keep up with the load? It's very important to
Mhm.
have that dialogue. So, yes, I wish I had it earlier. But I was running from it myself,
Mhm.
even though I'm in the field. It's because like that's work. I don't want to come home and talk about this.
Yeah. And that's the challenge sometimes when you evolve in a specific field. If you immerse in it every single day, it's hard to just go around and say, okay, I'm trying to check off for the day. So this is it. I'm
Yeah.
closing the business. And then you
Mhm.
get home and you go right back into those same conversation. So
Yeah.
sometimes even on a personal matter in a family's environment, you have to realize that I might have to take back the load, have the conversation, validate, and then, okay, now I can relax because the worry is still there. Because if you
Yes.
notice and you're not saying anything, it's gonna catch back with you.
Yes. And you're
Yeah,
gonna have to have a conversation, period. Yes, very much so. And
yeah,
confront it. Like when it's uncomfortable, sometimes it's okay to reach out to someone to have the conversation with you, with the person as a
mhm,
support, you know?
yeah.
Yeah.
You've mentioned boundaries a little earlier, so I'm gonna ask you, what boundary or ease have you implemented in your personal or professional life to maintain and support your own mental health well-being?
Well, definitely. So over the years, I learned early in my, you know, being in the community work, and as an educator in the schools, people knowing, having access to you and calling you late at night, for example. And I would respond because I'm a crisis worker and we do very well to responding to crises. And I'm reactive by nature. So, oh, my son was beaten up by the police. This happened. You know, what? Da, 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 da. So I'm a night crawler. I don't sleep. I'm responding to all these crises. Then I go to work in crises. It's all I know. And my whole personal life is crisis. So I had to learn very early on when I said I ended up in getting the MRI and in
Mhm,
this machine going, what is happening right now? How did I get here at age 24?
mhm,
And they're telling me if you keep up like this, you can die because your heart is almost worse than the heart of a smoker's.
mhm.
And that's when I realized, wow, this mental health thing, let me move that off of that. Your well being, because that's what affects the mental health, needs to be in check. So I had to set the boundaries and put into place things like for my spiritual life. How
Mhm.
am I doing my daily check in? Am I moving? Because, oh, we don't have time to exercise. I have my job. I have my child. I'm in school. You know what I mean? So setting the boundaries when it comes to time management of what's important and making that a high priority,
Mhm.
making me. So before it was like my child and my job and everyone else, but no, me a high priority. So that's the main boundary is setting myself up to say, this is my time in the morning, my
Yeah.
daily practices, and then everyone is going to come after. And that was hard to flip the script, especially as a
Mhm.
woman, we're designed as nurturers to serve others like, hey, okay, all right, I'm there. I'm here to feed into you. No, no, no. I got to make sure I get
Mhm.
nourished first,
Yeah.
and then I can help, help
Someone
you.
else.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
What would be one key message that you would want to leave with the listeners? If there's nothing that they remember from this whole segment,
Hmm.
what would be that one thing that you would want them to pay attention to?
You know what? Reach out, lean on your support,
Okay.
nourish and nurture yourself.
Hmm.
And going back to the question you asked me about the adults and people, but for everyone to, well, I'll say this because this thing, self care, is so commodified that I'm cringing when I hear it now, right? Everyone's on self care since the pandemic, especially.
Hmm.
Self care is a luxury for some. A mother with 5 kids who's trying to find her next apartment right now and has no job, you can't tell her to pamper herself and
Hmm.
put on a little facial. Right now, what we all need, especially in a time of social distancing, is community care.
Yeah.
We need to care for others. So, what I would say is open our arms, and we don't stop at virtual hugs and check ins, but let's try to go beyond and be creative as a community. So,
Hmm.
if someone's going through something and you know they're sick, let's get them a Hello Fresh. I'm not, well, no plugs because you guys are not sponsoring this place, but a subscription food box until they sponsor, we won't name it.
Yeah.
To that family. Someone's going through something, maybe get them a book. Let's show love in
Hmm.
creative ways. So that's my thing. It's community care in a creative way,
Yeah.
thinking of other people's well-being and how would I want to be blessed. And I say that because I went through a crisis, and coworkers showed up with groceries, and I was mind blown because this they're not my family. I would never. I had tears, Paula.
Hmm.
So I say it: community care, self care for each other.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah,
And I totally agree with you. It's those little things where, as they say, it's the devil is in the small details.
yeah.
It's the sense where it doesn't have to be something huge. It doesn't have to be something expensive,
Hmm.
but taking the time to check in and then do a little something,
A little something,
a
something.
little something. And
Yeah.
whether it's, you know what, I know you kids love cereals, this
Yes.
special brand, I drop that in front of your house. Whatever it is, it's not so much that I think you're in need, but it's just to remind you you're not alone. There are
That's it.
people around and are paying attention.
Yeah.
And it's huge. And that's the part where I think pandemic has helped us be a little more attentive for
Yes.
some individuals. I wouldn't say
True.
for everybody,
Hmm.
but it's just this community care. Even when you're going to the grocery, I know there's this woman at the grocery near my house, and the way she says, "Hi, are you doing?" And she takes the time to look at you in your eyes, not just, "Hi, how are you doing? Is that all for today?" It's just small little things, and you're like, "Oh, so you're paying attention." And to me, those are small things you can do anywhere with
Yeah.
anyone, and there wouldn't be any challenges.
That's it. Now, just end to say, we cannot serve from an empty cup.
No.
I love Paula. You're like me. We pour into others, but sometimes you have to pause, right?
Yep.
And get your cup filled and learn what fills your cup, because
Yeah.
what fills your cup may not fill my cup,
Yep.
right? So keep learning yourself, and who you were 10 years ago is
It's
not
not
who
the
you
same.
are now. So you have to find different things.
Mhm.
So yeah.
And it's figuring out, because I would have never pictured myself as a nature girl. But trust me, whew, nowadays we're going in it. I have my equipment and I'm thinking, this is nice. Just hearing the breeze through
Yes. The
the
trees. Yes.
trees. It's just wow, small little things.
Serenity.
Yeah.
Serenity. Yes. Yes.
So we each to each his own. So we're not going to tell people which one you should take, but pay attention. Figure out
Pay.
what works for
Listen,
you.
I love that. Pay attention.
Yeah.
Figure out what works for you. Hey, that's a book, Paula.
Yeah. You're gonna have me write so many books, friend. It's like, whoo, I need time for that.
Pay attention.
Yes, every single day to you and to the people around you.
That's right. I received
So,
that. Thank you.
how can people get in contact with you or hear some of the amazing work that you do?
Oh, well. So it's Roen Higgins on every platform that's out there. So yes, it's spelled normally, Roen Higgins. And I am on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn, Twitter very rarely. And yeah, my website, roenhiggins.com. And the work that I do, I also have a page called The Elevated Creative, is where I coach faith-based multipreneurs and creatives. And
Oh,
also Truth Empire, which is about helping young people know their heritage, build on their identity in the present, and leave a legacy through financial literacy and getting them to read and learn about things beyond their gaming and their cell phones. So that is so important for me, for people to know their roots.
yes.
So yes, and
And
empowering you to tell your story. Everyone to tell their story.
and I have to say, and this is where the plug comes in. I cannot envision, should I say, a world where everything is on the screen.
Mm-hmm.
The paper, the book actually opens your mind to different things. But if we
Yes.
don't learn to read, if
Mm-hmm.
we don't actually practice that, because not everything needs to be speed read, and you have to stay in those moments, and that's something we need to work on with the generations that seem to have it easy, but then I'm always expecting someone else to come up with something because imagination is not there.
You're correct. But I have to say thank you for even your platform, Paula, because in this day and age of podcasts and vlogs, these kind of these platforms, you're allowing your audience to hear other people's stories. So that's
Yeah.
why I say we need to tell our own stories. So by you doing that, you allow our stories to be heard. So thank you for doing this
Thank you
and
for
having real
mentioning.
conversations. I have to add that.
Yes, yes. And for me, in the end, it is about enabling people
Hmm.
to get to their better self,
Yes.
to actively seek their potential. There
Mhm.
is so much potential in society, but sometimes we're stuck in those routine, in those habits, and we don't further research what could be
Mhm.
your true calling. Because you know what? You have a passion. Mental health is one of those, but that came without a diploma. It
That's right.
was that
Experience.
was ingrained into me. Every single one of us has a contribution to make. Gifts and talents. Am I
Right.
using them? And that's the part for me. This whole exercise about showing people, and I love calling it exercise because it's not an exercise, even though you can exercise with it. Different
Yeah.
conversation, but it's really from the perspective, find out what's your natural God given talent
That's right. Mhm.
and use it to help others around you.
Passion and purpose, yeah. And
Yes.
just that, because especially as creatives and you're creating content right now and telling stories, for those who are going through it, who are creatives as well, I speak this, they may not recognize because we're always doing, do not isolate yourself. That goes for everyone. Do not isolate yourself. Know you're not alone. And
Mhm.
there are people waiting to connect with you. So you're not alone. I think that's
There's
what's
a
so
tribe that just awaits to hear
that's
from you. So
right.
that,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's what you want. You want it. It's like even if I feel like I'm all by myself, trust me,
Yes.
there are people waiting
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
connect with you.
I love it.
So thank you very much for another wonderful conversation. I am keeping so many of those tips, and of course, didn't mention it, but I'm also a plant lover, and it got worse
Well, I'm coming to you for tips.
with pandemic because it's just like I'm giving some of them away. So if you need that, just
Yes,
let me
yes.
know, and I will. It'll be coming your way too.
Hey, this is on live feed right now, so you guys all
Yes,
heard that. I'm
yes,
coming
I
for some
promise.
plants.
I said I will follow through.
I love
Trust me.
it. Yes.
So thank you again for this wonderful conversation. Thank you for sharing your story so that others can actually recognize what it is in them that they can actually help others with. So
Awesome. Thank you.
it's been a pleasure.
Appreciate it.